Hello, welcome to episode 24 of... If you don't know the title by now, I don't know what to do for you, but it's Liam Small Abridges, A History of Newfoundland by D.W. Prowse, 15 to 20 pages at a time, every single day, or until the bars reopen, or if he feels like maybe not doing it today, because this is starting to get old quick. At the end of yesterday's episode, we finished chapter 13, which is cool, and moving into chapter 14, that was the end of the reign of King George III, 60 years in the good. Gonna turn off my space heater, gonna crack a beer. Hey guys. Yeah, so we got to the end of quite a long chapter there. No new cases of COVID today. I'm desperately trying to get my sleep cycle back on track. Let's see where we end up today. So, at the end of the last chapter, we finished, long reign of King George III. We got that sweet appendix action. Okay, so I'm going to read as the beginning of every chapter says, with the important dates that we moved through during chapter 14. Starting with the reign of King George IV, and then we'll move into the reign of King William IV. King George IV, 1823, the last of the Red Indians of Newfoundland seen. Indian women brought to St. John's, Newfoundland School Society established. Mr. Cormac crossed the island, and some other shit happened. 1824, Imperial Act number 5 of George IV for a better administration of justice in Newfoundland, appointing Supreme Court with Chief Justice and 2 assistant judges. First fire company, the Eastern Ward, established in St. John's. 1825. Sir Thomas Cochrane is our governor. No, not Life is a Highway, Tom Cochrane. This is Sir Thomas Cochrane of Cochrane Street. Not of Cochrane Street, but he made it. 1826, Supreme Court of Newfoundland, constituted by Royal Charter. First assistant judges with Chief Justice. Okay, so in this, there's just piles of names, because so much of this is like who was elected to which district, and it starts, again, because we have more detail now, because we're in the 1820s, that, there's gonna be some really boring stuff that I'm gonna skip over. Not because, like, it's gonna be meaningless. It's just names, like, changing, or who ran against who for what position, and there's, like, no interesting story about it. It's just fucking what happened. In 1828, publication of P. Morris's pamphlet, Great Agitation for Representative Institutions. We'll get to that. 1831, the first coach road opened to Portugal Cove. 1832, Representative Assembly granted to Newfoundland. 1833, 34, sessions of the House of Assembly. 1836, the first light was erected on Cape Spear, a bank of British North America established in St. John's. So, that's some interesting shit. So if you recall at the end of the last day's thing, we were talking about this case where these fellas, Butler and Lundrigan, it was like Butler v. Lundrigan or whatever, and Buddy got, he got whipped, remember, he got whipped and, fucking with his bare back, and he passed out from all the pain or his wounds or whatever it was, and then, I don't know if it was Dr. Carson himself. Anyway, people petitioned the government against, like, well, I don't know if this is the way we should be doing justice here on the island. So, where the fuck are we? Okay. So, right now, we have Sir Charles Hamilton was recalled for the purpose of consulting with the ministry. So, Chief Justice Tucker just is acting as the governor during his absence. This is around 1822, let's say. As the result of these deliberations, the Royal Charter, the Imperial Act 5, King George IV, an act for a better administration of justice in Newfoundland was passed. This is good. That is good things. Nice to have a bit of law and order here. Okay. I'm going to read you part of the charter, but it might possibly be the longest run-on sentence of all time. So many commas. I'm going to see if I can do this. This is an act for better administration of justice in Newfoundland, also known as the Imperial Act, the Royal Charter. Whereas it is expedient to make further provision for the administration of justice in the colony of Newfoundland, it is therefore enacted by the King's most excellent majesty, by and with consent and advice, in this present parliament assembled, and by the authority of the same, that it shall and may be lawful for his majesty, by his charter or letters patent, under the great seal, to institute a superior court of jurisdiction in Newfoundland, all which shall be entitled the Supreme Court of Newfoundland, and the said court shall be a court of record, and shall have all civil and criminal jurisdiction whatever, Newfoundland and all lands, islands, and territories dependent upon the government thereof, as fully and amply to all intents and purposes as his majesty's courts of King's Bench, Common Pleas, Exchequer, and High Court of Chancery. Chancery? Is that part of Great Britain called England have, or any of them hath, and the said Supreme Court shall also be a court of oyer and terminer, and general gold delivery in and for Newfoundland, and all places within the government thereof, and shall also have jurisdiction in all cases of crimes and misdemeanors committed on the banks of Newfoundland for any of the seas or islands to which ships or vessels repair from Newfoundland for carrying on the fishery. Why do people write like that? I don't know what I didn't get any of it. I was just trying to read it. Anyway, Royal Charter. That's good. Although the act was passed in 1824, the Supreme Court was not duly constituted until the 2nd of January, 1826. This shit takes time, ladies and gentlemen. Bottom of page. Yeah, okay, I got that bit. So there's three districts or jurisdictions or whatever. I'll make sure I get the right word for that. Nope, can't find it. Anyway, there was Central, Southern, and Northern Circuit Courts, basically. Mini courts before the Supreme Court, probably in St. John's. And now, if at this point in my 24 episodes, you've been asking yourself, well, what are they wearing? Well, DW's got you covered. It says here, the judges appointed under the Act were Chief Justice Tucker and Assistant Judges John William Malloy and Augustus Wallet. That's not his name. Wallet DeBars. That must be it. Malloy was soon removed and Judge Brenton appointed in his stead. See, I don't know, they just, little details like that. You just get attached to a character and they Game of Thrones them on you just like that. The dull dress of the Chief Justice, as superior civil officer, was appointed by the King, a blue coat with no epaulets nor lappets, buttonholes upon the cuff and collar only, but the same pattern was worn by Lords Lieutenants. The Chief Magistrate was ordered to wear a blue coat with red cuffs and collar, buttons with crowns, so you knew who you were fucking with. And GR cockade on the side of the hat. Constables were to wear blue coats and buttons with the crown. So they're all wearing blue coats and buttons. I don't know why we're getting into this. Anyway, His Excellency had a great taste for official forms and ceremonials. Lieutenant Colonel W. Haley, Thomas H. Brooking, John W. Dunscombe, and Newman W. Hoyles were in 1825 appointed His Excellency's colonial aide-de-camp with the rank of Lieutenant Colonels of Militia. Sir Thomas... Okay, so now... Did I get through that part? Fuck. Okay, yeah, what they were wearing, one of the most important parts of our history. Now we're going to move on to a fella named Sir Thomas Cochrane. Cochrane was a pretty deadly guy by all accounts. Sir Thomas Cochrane is now universally admitted to have been the best governor ever sent to Newfoundland. So, there you have it. Everywhere you see monuments erected to his memory. He inaugurated our system of roads, promoted agriculture, and laid out the beautiful grounds of Virginia as his country seat. Cochrane Street and the Military Road reminds us of the great administrator. I cannot say much in praise... This is DW himself. I cannot say much in praise of his... This is amazing. He's like, the guy was great. The guy was amazing. He did wonderful things. But he goes, I cannot say as much praise of His Excellency's taste in the erection of Government House. This over in Bannerman Park there, right? The site is an admirable one. The grounds are well laid out, but the building itself looks more like a prison than a vice-regal residence. The ditch all round is a trap to catch snow, and in winter the north entrance is as cold as Siberia. I can give him credit for I can give him credit for every other improvement, but I am compelled to say that Government House is a huge pile of unredeemed ugliness. Ooh, DW! Fucking throwing shade, just fucking doesn't like the Government House. And you know what? I'm with you. And the only thing that is worse than government was putting up that stupid fucking fence around it so we can't even enjoy its ugliness. Anyway, there's a picture of Government House. If you didn't know what it looked like, now you do. Yeah, it looks like a prison cold as Siberia. So now, the Cochrane's government was from 1825 to 1834. He was so popular, social, and hospitable. He could have been seen out on horseback in the mornings. He was known as a really hands-on guy in terms of like getting the streets done. When he'd come and be actually, imagine the boss actually being there to see it done and fucking be a part of it instead of just getting paid the most. Okay, just make sure. Okay, so during the establishment of local legislature, of course, there was going to be some back and forth as to how it was going to be done. And I don't know if you remember our old buddy Dr. Carson, that cantankerous old pamphlet writer, but he comes back. So in the establishment of local legislature, I actually kind of like this Dr. Carson guy because he's a bit punk rock, if you ask me. Dr. Carson and Patrick Morris. Of course, they become important, and the two great leaders in the struggle for local legislature in Newfoundland are Dr. William Carson and Patrick Morris. Both were distinguished, able men, but in marked contrast to each other. The doctor, the originator of the movement, so he was like kickstarted this whole fucking thing off. The originator of the movement was a stiff-mannered, pedantic old gentleman, dogmatic, self-opinionated, and independent, a very clever man, both in his profession and the conduct of public affairs. Morris, on the other hand, had all the qualities of a popular tribune. You can see both in his writings and his speeches that he was an impetuous Irishman. Everything was done with a rush. In place of the doctor's calm reasoning and carefully polished periods, his pamphlets are full of flashes of Irish wit and sarcasm. So I guess they were just fucking Pepsi and Coke. Just two opposite guys vying for the way that we should be doing something. I don't know. You could probably call them the Liberal and Conservative Party today. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. So just more nice words about Thomas Cochrane, and an eminently practical man. He not only organized improvements, he personally superintended their execution. Remember I said he was hands-on? Well, there you go, from D.W.'s mouth himself. They really do consider Cochrane to be one of the first civil governors, the first real administrator and ruler of the colony as an independent thing, separate from Great Britain. Fucking cool as shit. Here's a picture of him. There he is. Hey, Tom. How'd you getting on? Probably not great these days. Full of worms. Where am I to? Page 426. Cochrane's government, seen on horseback. Page 420. Okay, yeah, just more really. We're just jerking off Tom Cochrane here for a minute. He has, as far as his limited authority permitted to him, given every encouragement to the cultivation of soil. So Tom Cochrane was really about fucking making Newfoundland self-sustaining. He has encouraged every measure calculated to promote the internal resources of the country. He has made roads. Some of them have been at his own expense. He has been a patron of education for the poor and the rich. He has scarcely landed on our shores when he recommended the establishment of a university for an education for our respectable youth. So good on you there. To prevent the necessity of sending them to the United States and other parts. So he just really wanted to fucking make us our own thing, man. I can get behind that. Fuck yeah. There you go, Cochrane. All the great improvements around St. John's may be said to date, 95. Be said to date from Sir Thomas Cochrane's time. The roads to Topsail, Bay Bulls, Torbay, and Portugal Cove have been commenced before his arrival, but it was him who saw it through to the very end. And then we started tilling all the land around the city. So Mount Pearl, Brookfield, Hellbrook, I guess what would be Kilbride and the Goulds and stuff. So now we're clearing the land and making it farmlands and stuff. So, building roads to and from. This is great. We got like a school, and we mentioned a fire hall off the top of the chapter. We're killing it after we got over that whole famine, frost, and fire winter there. It was like during the whole first part of Thomas's administration, there was a continued agitation for a local legislature. Whilst the Irish were probably the most busy workers for reform, many of the leading Protestant merchants took an active part. Besides the committee, the most conspicuous supporters of the movement were William and a whole bunch of other people. I think I know where this is going. I have a pretty good idea. Yep, that was the next thing I was going to read. Okay, so of course we're trying to establish local legislature. We are really, getting there anyway. Tom Cochrane is over there fucking building highways, gone sick. And of course we come back to our old friends, and I'll just start reading it off here. The bitterest antagonists of the measure were, the measure being legislature. The bitterest antagonists of the whole endeavor were the old West Country merchants. Fuck those guys, man. Pardon me. The idea of Newfoundland having a legislature was, to their minds, simply outrageous. One of them, Peter Urgier, stated in his evidence, they are making roads in Newfoundland. Next thing, they'll want to be having carriages and driving about. Imagine. In his pamphlet, Sir Patrick Morris sacrifices the author of a work entitled A View of the Rise and Progress of the Newfoundland Fishery. The whole object of this writer was to recommend a return to the rule of the fishing admirals. So, whoever wrote it was a bit old school. The pamphlet was published in Poole, and the writer declared his object was to give an enlarged view of the fisheries of Newfoundland, blah, blah, blah. There was no doubt, because, remember, it took like 2 years for the whole thing to fucking get established, and that whole reason is almost entirely, once again, because of the West England fucking fisher merchants from where? Devonshire. You motherfucking... Since day one! There was that little period during the fucking war where they were paying out nice, and then they went right back to being dickheads. It's almost like they pass it down from generation to Anyway, so they slowed it all down, but ultimately it happened because they couldn't ignore it. Like, of all the British colonies, even Bermuda at this point. Bermuda had a local government. Nova Scotia had obtained it in 1758, fucking like 75 years before. And older American colonies had always governed themselves. So we had to fucking get with the times, basically. We're the last ones on board. That doesn't surprise me. Nova Scotia had it and whatever. That's just, every time I repeat myself, I'm looking back at my computer to make sure I'm following my notes, not missing anything. On page 429, so this is, and this took a little while because there was the Reform Bill, and the Reform Bill, they don't really get into it, but it just helped, it allowed for debate, I guess, is what I mean. In 1832, the bill was passed in the House of Commons, granting a representative assembly to Newfoundland. On August 26th of that year, Sir Thomas returned to St. John's, armed with the full powers to carry out the great constitutional change. The general election took place in the autumn of 1832. So it's Thomas Cochrane, and now we're going to do some fucking campaigning. I feel like every year we're campaigning for something. Anyway, so it seems the candidates were Dr. Carson, Mr. Patrick Keogh, Mr. William Thomas, Mr. John Keat, and Mr. W.B. Rowe, who appear to have gone to the poll. Pardon me. The great Dr. Carson was defeated. The author of the new Constitution was the first to test the proverbial fickleness of the public. Carson, he had been a pioneer of the new movement. He had suffered in the people's cause, and yet in the public, that many-headed monster thing, the mob, they were the first to cast aside their leader in the fight for home rule, meaning even though Carson sort of got the ball rolling on the idea, they went with somebody else in the end. And they gave their support and rule to untried men. Carson was a veteran of the Liberal cause. Compared to him, Kent was a mere neophyte. The doctor's defeat was due, so the story goes, to an old electioneering trick. An Irishman called Bennett came into a booth where a number of Wexford men were casting their votes. Well, he said, I hear the doctor did not care how it went, just so long as he could bait Kent enough to them blooming yellow bellies. Dr. Keogh was a Wexford man, and after that, he got every Wexford vote. The story was a barefaced lie, but it served its purpose, so just poll tampering. Our old friend Mr. John Kent, who then fleshed his maiden sword, was a very young man. His address grew on thoroughly, and blah, 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 political saturation. Anyway, John Kent, I guess, won it. On September 4th, 1832, he states our Constitution has yet only half developed itself, blah, 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 so he's... Oh my god, Mr. James Sims is appointed as our first Attorney General of Newfoundland on the 2nd of January, 1826. Remember I said where it just gets namey and facty? Senior member of council, lower councils, fucking higher councils for this. So the following members were elected to 9 districts to the first House of Assembly in 1832, first House of Assembly. I'm not going to give you their names, but the 9 districts were St. John's, Conception Bay, Twillingate and Fogo, Bonavista, Trinity, Ferryland, Buren, Fortune Bay, and Placentia. Our old pal from the French. So that was the House of Assembly in 1832, so in 1833. So it says here, this is kind of funny, the House of Assembly in 1833 was the youngest constituent body in America, but it was not one with behind any of them in stately parliamentary pageant. It's a weird sentence. But it was not... Anyway, they didn't have pageantry and there was no frivolous fucking shit, I guess. H.B. Doyle in London caricatured our parliament as a bow wow parliament, with a big Newfoundland dog in wig and bands as speaker, putting the motion, as many are not of that opinion say bow, of the contrary, wow, the bows have it. So Doyle was a painter, I don't know, which is kind of funny, and there's a picture of it if you'd like to see the Bow Wow Court. It's a little hard to tell. I wonder if I'm related to this Doyle. I am Doyle blood. So anyway, there's the Bow Wow Court of Newfoundland. Still feels similar, doesn't it? Anyway, it appears there were only first 4 candidates. The blah 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 tallies of 10, and this is just fucking stupid anecdotes. I've got a note here on page... And this is mudslinging at this point. People are just saying shit. They're trying to trick each other, say shit. It's like it started immediately. It's just classic politics. John Bingley Garland was elected the Speaker of the House in 1834 on the removal of Mr. William Thomas to the Legislative Council and Garland's retirement. William Carson was elected for St. John's. So I guess is that Dr. Carson? William Carson was elected for St. John's and William Bickford Rowe for Trinity. There was a sharp contest between Dr. Carson and Sir Thomas Bennet for the speakership. Bennet won. God, Dr. Carson loses again. I guess that first Carson wasn't Dr. Carson. Carson was going for the speakership, and he lost. That's gotta sting. The most absurd thing about the Constitution was the creation of the Colonial House of Lords, the Legislative Council. So it's like a council within. This is where bureaucracies and fucking stuff starts. It's where... The Legislative Council. It looked as if it had been formed on the purpose to render the whole machinery unworkable. It consisted wholly of officials. The government's instructions, besides directing him to summon a House of Assembly, commanded him also to call together the following persons appointed to be members of His Majesty's Council of the Island. It just fucking gummed up the works. We just got a government. Now you're like, well, now let's start making clubs inside it. And now, of course, the two separate bodies, as might be expected, immediately disagreed. Chief Justice Tucker, a Bermudan, contended that the Assembly had no right to pass a revenue bill. The matter was referred to England, and as a matter of course, the ministry supported the lower house. Richard Alexander Tucker resigned his office, and the colony he left the colony in disgust. I'm not sure how we felt about it. Hard to tell at this fucking point. We move on. God, is this my... okay, that's where my notes end on my computer. Here on... just to finish things off here, Carson and Kent in the House of Assembly kept up a continual quarrel with Bolton and Sims. They fought over the most trivial details. Hard to believe that. When the lower branch styled themselves the Commons House of Assembly and Parliament assembled, they were ordered to strike out the word Parliament. Their controversies were of the most puerile character. Each side displayed vile temper and utter incapacity. The essence of politics is compromise, a principle that neither side seems to have understood. On the whole, the council were the most cantankerous. Well, yep. Anyway, where we'll pick up tomorrow is a sentence that reads, the fiercest controversy between the two bodies was over the contingency bill of the lower house. And let me tell you, I'm not the least bit excited to find out what that's all about. Anyway, guys, that brings an end to installment web thingy 24 of Liam Small, Abridges, A History of Newfoundland by D.W. Prowse, 15 to 20 pages at a time, every day, or until the bars reopen. Which, I don't know, what do you guys think? 2021? 20... I miss paying too much for beer. Anyway, guys, I'll be talking to you. See you tomorrow.